Welcome back, everyone, to the Awful Takes podcast. Our first review
of the year.
Yeah,
and it's been a while.
Our kind of first review in a while. Yeah.
Look back, I was like the last one we did.
The normal format of this show, if you guys are joining us for the first time, is me and Wallied make recommendations to each other that we either have seen or haven't seen. Maybe it's a movie we just want to talk about, and we kind of go through that and our overall opinion of it. And maybe our opinion has changed over time, things like that. We kind of delve into all of that. However, with these episodes, these are movies currently releasing, and we go and watch them, and we just give our first time viewing kind of views. Who knows? Maybe our opinions could change upon a rewatch, things like that. So I just want to kind of state that with these review episodes is generally we've seen them one time.
And we've just had a while to think about it and sit with it. You know,
one thing I will say is I have had my opinions change on certain movies. Some movies I saw for the first time and I generally didn't like, and I really grew a hatred for them. And then years later, upon a rewatch, I'm like, what the hell was I thinking?
I know that definitely happened with Furiosa for sure. You know, where I was like, yeah, this is decent. But then I saw it a couple more times after the review we did. And I was like, wow, this is a really amazing movie. You know, like how did I miss all this?
So it can happen.
Yeah.
However, today we are going to be talking about Mickey 17 by director Bong Joon Ho. A big name. Really surprised everyone a couple of years ago with the release of Parasite.
Almost 6 years.
Just really put him on the map. And obviously we were all anticipating his next release. So here it is. I will say Bong Joon Ho has two different kind of movies that he kind of does. Obviously, he's got his Korean filmmaking and everything like that. And then he does his kind of American made movies. This one does fall into that different kind of category that maybe something like a Snowpiercer or Okja was. So yeah, here we are, Mickey 17. This was on me and Wallied's most anticipated movies of this year.
Definitely,
So it was quite the watch. I'm going to say that. It's definitely quite the watch. Do I recommend that people go out and see this? For a lot of my general movie-going fans and general here or there with movies, I actually would not recommend you to go and watch this movie. For my film appreciators, my
art house
people,
the foreign fans,
check it out. I also have a different category of friends that I have who just really love Robert Pattinson. If you love Robert Pattinson, okay, go and watch this movie.
You get double the Pattinson.
I swear, at one point in this movie, we'll obviously get into it, but at one point in this movie, it sounded like the Heron and Batman were like having a conversation with each other.
Really? I thought it was more like Steve Buscemi from Fargo. It was definitely that for sure for me.
Because at one point, Robert Pattinson's delving into his Batman voice from obviously playing Batman. And then for those of you guys who know, he did voice acting for Ghibli with the Heron of The Boy and the Heron. And it just sounded like they were just talking to each other. And I was like, all right, this is like really just kind of blowing my mind. So yeah, Mickey 17, Bong Joon Ho. Where are you at with him, Wallied?
For me, I've really loved a lot of the stuff he's made. Parasite is obviously fantastic. I wasn't the biggest fan of Okja. I thought it was just kind of decent overall, you know. And so hearing he was kind of going back to doing like an American kind of film again, it did kind of worry me a little bit. But once I kind of did see the cast, I wasn't like, I did feel a little bit more like, okay, like a little bit more relieved. Like, all right, you know, I'm kind of curious to see what he'll do with Robert Pattinson and Toni Collette and Steven Yeun and everything, you know. And so for me, other than that, I've really loved a lot of his films. He has kind of yet to miss with me other than Okja, but I was kind of excited to kind of see him go back and doing like a sci-fi thing again, because I do really love Snowpiercer a lot. And so for me, I didn't watch the trailers or anything. I didn't really know too much of what the movie was about. I didn't even know
that it got delayed.
Yeah, it got delayed like a million times because it was supposed to come out like last year, actually. And so when I sat down to see the movie in theaters a couple of weeks ago, I was very surprised with where the film was going and everything. I wasn't really sure what to kind of expect and everything, but I was kind of surprised. It's definitely a lot. It's like a mix of Okja and like Snowpiercer. You know, it's like it kind of takes like the best aspects of both, you know, and kind of the worst aspects of Snowpiercer at points for sure. But I would say overall, I liked it. It was definitely like a polarizing watch for sure, especially in like the first 20-30 minutes. I was kind of like, okay. So this is kind of like a interesting, like high concept type of thing where he's kind of like employed to be like an expendable, and they just like keep cloning him. And I don't know, there was a really interesting shot of like where like the doctors were like taking a picture for like a social media thing or whatever, and you just see like Mickey just like falling out of like the printer thing. Like that was kind of like an interesting, fascinating commentary on like how I guess people view employees sometimes, you know, that they're kind of just replaceable. Mm-hmm. I guess I'm kind of curious how you kind of took that first 20-30 minutes.
I will say the first 20 or 30 minutes was probably my favorite part. Okay. The setup of this world was really intriguing. Obviously, I love the narration that was done in that first half between Mickey obviously going over his lives and everything and how that all worked. And then not even to mention just the look of everything. Our first 20 minutes I really loved with like the ship, the worlds, the planet that he was on and everything. That whole winding kind of line of waiting to get off the planet and everything. I just found really interesting.
It's almost kind of like like an immigration or like a emigration type of thing where they're trying to move to a new country and everything, which feels kind of oddly relevant right now to what's going on. But being pushed to that desperation of wanting to leave so bad that you sign up for something that no one else would, which is hilarious because he's like, he didn't even read like the terms of service or contract or anything. But a lot of people do that though a lot of the time, you know, especially, which I thought was hilarious.
I love that. I thought the whole printing idea and everything was really cool. I thought the look of that machine was great in general. Kind of felt like a blend of a lot of different sci-fi stuff that I love. I love kind of like the practicality of objects that you just kind of take no second glance at. And now they kind of reframe it into like a different sci-fi kind of object. Obviously with the brick, it's just like his memory backup that's stored, but it's just a brick, you know? And to me, I love it when sci-fi does that. I love when they take those inanimate objects and kind of just, now it's this, you know?
Yeah. It's like
very kind of Star Wars, very early much. Lucas, that just makes the world feel kind of lived in, you know?
Yeah. Feels kind of a little bit like a THX 1138.
Exactly.
Points. Yeah.
However, with that whole thing, besides that, I felt like the ideas and stuff were great, but it kind of felt not half-baked, but just kind of all over the place. Certain things I really loved. Obviously, the standout, Robert Pattinson does
He's incredible.
Amazing performance. He carries this movie for me. He's just amazing. And I love the concept of him reliving his life and basically starting fresh. But what would happen if kind of two of them existed at the same time? I love the whole idea of like, that's like something that can't happen, you know?
Right.
Really cool. However, past that first 25 minutes, I felt like there was no real kind of growth that occurred in this movie for me with his character in general. And maybe that obviously, maybe it was meant to be like that. Maybe there was not much growth for him to really go through.
Right.
However, I just felt like first 20 minutes was going for this kind of slice of life kind of thing. and then out of nowhere, just all these different genres kind of get thrown at you.
Yeah, it's hit or miss for sure. He's like a master of it in a lot of his films, especially like Memories of Murder and Parasite, and even Snowpiercer to an extent does it really well. But this felt kind of like just hit or miss at points where I was like, I can see why it would maybe work in this part, but it just doesn't a lot of the time, and it just feels kind of like shoehorned in, you know. I guess I would say for me, probably my biggest issue with it was the romance throughout.
Yeah,
I really wasn't a big fan of the love interest in the film, and I felt like the film was trying to kind of set up this like love triangle, maybe like polyamorous kind of relationship type of thing with the other woman that you were talking about before we recorded showing up, and it's just like it just kind of gets thrown out of the window like in like the second half, and it was just kind of like it felt kind of pointless a lot of the time. But I don't know, it was just like it just didn't really work for me, and I was kind of like, oh, are they going to do like a love triangle thing? Because that could be kind of interesting of like showing her maybe falling in love with the two different Mickeys, you know, especially because they're so different from one another.
Yeah.
And we get like maybe one scene of it, and that's kind of it. And it's just like, I don't know. The romance just felt kind of forced to me a lot of the time. And I will say, I guess it was kind of cool. They did like a little foreshadowing thing with like the sex position at the end, where like the alien baby or whatever. But so I will say like that was kind of funny, and I did like that. But other than that, I really didn't care for the romance all that much, and I felt like it was kind of like a missed opportunity of like where you're just kind of trying to shove a lot of things in the film, and it's just like, it just felt kind of half baked.
For those of the people who are gonna say like, obviously this is something I hear that's Korean filmmaking, is they do all these different things, and I get that. I'm not saying that that's like a downside. However, it's just a blend of everything. I feel like there was probably a better way to go about blending all these different plot lines, story ideas, and making them feel a bit more seamless. I don't have a problem with the super out there things that this movie goes for. However, at the end of the day, when I kind of look at it as like an overall picture, it just feels very sporadic and messy, you know, to where it's just like things get introduced, they get dropped. Like we were mentioning, the main romance, this second girl gets introduced and basically kind of falls for Mickey. Throughout the last third of the movie, she's nowhere. I swear she just disappears or something. I might have to watch it again. Maybe there was a reason as to why, but it's just like, wait, that was something we just spent like 10, 15 minutes on, and it's just kind of gone. I didn't feel like we came to a resolution.
Right. And it takes up like a big middle portion of the film too. You know, I noticed when I watched it was like the first 30, 40 minutes, it flies by, but then like the film kind of like slows down surprisingly. And I don't know. I'm curious to kind of watch it again and kind of see if I have an issue with it, but it felt really jarring while you were watching it for sure. And I guess I kind of appreciate the slow pace because it's like it gets you an idea of like the atmosphere of like the ship and everything, and kind of like what they're trying to colonize basically, which I kind of liked that setup and everything too, with like the little monster thing and everything like that. But yeah, it did feel kind of jarring at points, and especially when the pace does pick up in like the last like 40 minutes. So it was just like, oh, okay, we're back to the kind of like the fast pace again. Yeah.
I will say, the middle definitely feels, they could have had a better bridging of the first half and then the second, you know?
Right.
It just feels really out of place. And I don't know if it was the cutting of everything or just some things. I was just like, when we get to the climax, it's like, did that really need to be there? You know?
Right.
I just don't really feel like we came to that much of like a conclusion.
Yeah.
There's a lot of highlights in this movie. Obviously, Robert Pattinson's one of them.
Toni Collette gives a really fantastic performance too as like the villain's wife. I thought she was incredible in the movie.
I know me and you obviously really like Steven Yeun, so he's great in the movie.
He's great.
He's funny.
And I loved his relationship that he had with Mickey too. Yeah. That was actually like one of my favorite aspects of the film, you know, is kind of like seeing their quote unquote friendship and how you kind of just see he's basically like just using Mickey for like his gain, or like him to like his scams or whatever that he was doing with like the beef
macaroons.
That was insane. I was not expecting that at all. I love that whole fight sequence between Mickey and him, Mickey 18 and him, where he like almost puts him in like the fire and everything. That was so wild.
Yeah. Some performances obviously really good. Some are just kind of okay. And then some for me just didn't work at all.
You want to talk about Mark Ruffalo?
Mark Ruffalo is definitely one of them. I feel like at first I didn't mind it, and I was like, all right, it's kind of working. Like, obviously there are comparisons that we can draw from, but I just felt like the more they showed of him, the more I was just like, no, this is really not working. You know, compared to like maybe seeing one or two scenes of him, I might have been like, all right, that was kind of interesting. But the more I saw, I was just like, I would have sat down with Mark Ruffalo and been like, we need to try something else because this to me is just not working.
Right.
Toni Collette is obviously, I feel like it's a bit better, but I feel like the both of them just overall, I kind of see them both as the same. So I'm just like, I feel like Toni Collette obviously does it a lot better.
Yeah.
But Mark Ruffalo is just like, oh man, this just does not work.
Yeah, I think for me, Mark Ruffalo's performance, I thought it was okay. I thought the over the top was, again, just kind of like hit or miss. Like it worked for some scenes, but others it just felt kind of forced and kind of like a little obvious and preachy of like kind of what it was going for. I will say for me, it reminded me a lot of the mayor of Whoville from the Grinch movie. He looks so much like him. It's kind of weird. And I just can't unsee it. So now I'm like, oh gosh, you know, I'm just like, it's okay. Something I do kind of wish the film did. I don't know how much of it is based off the book or anything like that. So I don't know if it's like going based off the book, but I do wish they killed his character off in like the middle portion of the film, because I noticed in the first half they were kind of trying to like set up, I don't know if it maybe was, but I noticed they tried to kind of like set up like Toni Collette being kind of like the one like puppeteering everything and things like that, you know, because you get it, you see it in like an example of like where she's kind of like talking for him at points, you know. And so I was like, oh, okay, you know, are they gonna like are they going to like kill him off and she's going to kind of be like the main villain, where she's kind of like this Karen type of person where she wants to kind of like get their tails and everything like that, cool. You know? So I was kind of hoping the film was going to go for that. But then when I kind of saw like, oh, he did survive and he just has like a little scar now, I was like, okay, I'm not really into this film all that much.
Like, as much as like we use the term over the top with his performance, I still feel like it wasn't even anything that drastic. Obviously I use that definition. He does this over the top performance, but I still feel like there could have been so much more, you know? And I just feel like in all the scenes and things he was in, I felt like he was trying to get there, but I just felt like he as an actor couldn't portray that to the extent that he might really wanted to. Right. You know?
I wasn't the biggest fan of his voice either.
That's the thing. Like, I feel like maybe there could have been like more of like a physicality to the role. Right. And maybe he kind of could have portrayed it in that way too. But as far as like with the voice and his inflections as like an actor and stuff, I just never really bought it. And maybe that's my overall gripe with it, is I wasn't buying it. And I think at that point I was just like seeing Mark Ruffalo. Yeah,
it was almost just distracting at that point.
And I just wasn't seeing the character that they were trying to portray, you know?
Right.
So for whatever that is, like it kind of becomes a hindrance to the movie for me. Whenever you see his character, I feel like it's almost getting there to where it could be good, but it just never crosses over fully. I would say the one scene that does kind of work for me is obviously like him doing the talk show kind of thing. I thought that was kind of funny. I thought it was funny.
I liked the dinner scene. I thought that was kind of funny too. I really liked that.
And it's just like those little moments. But then by the final third, I was just like, all right, like this is the part. This is where he's finally going to kind of let loose, you know, like, because obviously he's pissed off at everything that's going on. And it just doesn't really go anywhere. And I'm just like, by the end of it, I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to think with this guy. And
he's almost just like he just wants to take over the world. It's kind of like a very simple villain, basically. It's just like kind of a forgettable villain to me, you know. And
overall, again, if I was director or whatever, I would have been like, we need to try something different.
Right.
I feel like they were meeting and they tried the first thing and they just kind of stuck with it, when it's like,
there's a lot of routes you can go with that character and everything, you know, especially in the second half, you know. I was like, I don't know what he did. He didn't even really do anything. He was just kind of there on his like little screen or whatever, just watching. And I'm like, okay, that's it, really?
And it just feels a little too. It doesn't mesh well. Again, that's the kind of my overall opinion with this movie in general is the things don't blend together well.
Unfortunately.
And if you were trying to get people, obviously, I know there are going to be people who say like that's what Korean cinema is. If you were trying to serve this as like an Americanized version of that, obviously Korean cinema, there was probably a better way to go about it to get people more invested in that kind of genre. You know, this could have been a nice kind of jumping point for people who aren't into Korean cinema.
Right.
However, I feel like if a majority of people watch this movie, they're not going to want to watch more of it.
I don't think they're going to want to watch any of Bong Joon Ho's films either, you know?
Yeah.
It's not a good entry point into like his stylings and everything.
Really
it just kind of feels like kind of on autopilot, honestly, you know? And I know it got delayed and everything, so I'm not sure how much of it is like studio interference and things like that. So that could also probably play a part into maybe why.
Yeah.
But I'm not entirely sure.
And I don't want to say like, I don't want to be the in the realm of Parasite was so good and this movie doesn't compare. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
I don't want to make it sound like I was hoping for the next Parasite. That's not what it was. Because obviously when the trailers came out, I was like, okay, this feels more in the realm of like a Snowpiercer or an Okja. So I wasn't expecting something on that level.
Of course.
However, I just feel like this doesn't feel serviceable to me as a film fan or me as like a sci-fi fan. You know, I feel like it doesn't really do either all that well. Yet I'm watching 2 hours of this thing, 2.5 hours of this thing. You know,
it's kind of long. It kind of drags at some points. I'm like, there's some stuff you could have, I feel like, trimmed out. You know, especially with the romance stuff. I felt like, yeah, you didn't really need that in there. And again, they don't really do anything with it other than the foreshadowing payoff thing that I mentioned. But I guess, do you kind of want to talk about like the climax and everything? And I guess that whole animal side of the film, because I thought that was a very intriguing side. And that's kind of what kept me engaged throughout.
Same. I will say with the animals and everything, this is what kind of elevates it a little bit better than something like Okja for me. I feel like this handles it a lot better. And a lot more is conveyed with the simplicity of it. And I love the directions goes in. Obviously very sci-fi. At one point they get like a translator working for these animals. I love that. And I love the voice design of the animals. It's really polarizing and it works really well. I love the herd aspect of them too. You know, like
a big family and everything. I really loved that.
Really cool.
It's kind of like bulls and everything, you know?
And the design of them is great. Like, obviously, they look kind of straightforward when you first see them, but then when in that climax, when they're like making noises and stuff, and I'm like, whoa, that's really cool design.
Yeah. One of my favorite moments was when like Mickey is like almost dying, and instead of like killing, like the animals killing him, he like they end up just kind of like saving him through like crowd surf type of thing. I was like, that was a big surprise. I really liked that aspect of the film, and it kind of showed you how much the animals were caring for him as a person, which took me by surprise. I was not expecting the film to show that and everything.
I love the aspect of that. I love the parallels it draws between Mickey and them. Obviously, people will kind of say like, obviously Mickey's just kind of one fraction of all his past lives and everything. And it draws those parallels with the animals of like, they're just all kind of seen as like the same, you know, and it's kind of the same view that the humans have on like someone like Mickey is just like, he's just there,
replaceable,
you know?
Yeah.
So I love that. I feel like that was tying into something really good and really interesting. And I love the tenseness of the climax. I will say I was invested.
I know, it was like the most action packed of like the whole movie, which I was very surprised by.
Yeah.
And I really loved it a lot. Like that was I was like on the edge of my seat. I was like, are they going to make it out of this alive or not? Or are they going to like, is one Mickey going to make it? Is one not, you know? So that was really that was great.
Really interesting.
And I love just Mickey 17 and 18. Honestly, I love just their dynamic. I love how different they are. You know, one is a lot more calm and is a lot more like just forgiving to people, and the other is just like super rebellious and it's just like, no, we got to take down the system, man. You know, and I love that. Robert Pattinson both plays off one another really, really well, you know?
Really good
It doesn't
job.
feel like distracting at all. They feel like totally different characters, you know, which I really appreciate. And I really think like the second half showcases that a lot better than in like kind of like the middle portion.
Definitely. Aspects of this movie, again, I feel like just didn't really get its time. And if for me, if it doesn't get enough time, like why is it there?
Right.
Obviously the love aspect, we touched on that. And then in the climax, there's just like this group of people wanting to form a coup against the leaders. And it just felt like it came out of nowhere, you know, stuff like that. I was just like, you get introduced and then it's there and then it just gets kind of forgotten about.
Right.
That is overall just my opinion of this movie. I will say I did leave overall enjoying it, and I will say this is definitely I would say a better effort than Okja.
Definitely.
I wouldn't put it on the same level as like Snowpiercer as far as his American releases. I probably like that movie a bit better as far as general going audiences. I cannot really recommend you watch this. If anything, watch Snowpiercer, or if you're not into Korean cinema, watch Parasite. You'll love it.
Yeah, that's kind of like the perfect one to watch. It gets everyone into Korean cinema.
Exactly.
And it gives you more an idea of like his style and like, you know, just kind of like the types of films he makes and everything like that.
And I was really anticipating this movie as like a sci-fi fan. There are obviously really great stuff that I love. The idea of eventually us printing humans and stuff I find very interesting and very fascinating.
Yeah.
And maybe the legal ramifications of that, of, you know, there being multiples. What if something like that was like frowned upon? I'm like, wow, that's really interesting as well. Those ideas, the sci-fi aspects that I like, don't really get too much time, and it just kind of just gets forgotten about. And I really would have liked something a bit more honed in. And I will say overall, the cinematography didn't really impress me at all in this movie. It just felt like kind of okay.
You know, I would say some of the colors looked kind of cool, like some of the browns and blues. You know, I kind of gave that like kind of 70s vintage sci-fi feel, you know, but yeah, it wasn't like super like, whoa, this is awesome and everything, you know. It just kind of looked like a standard kind of like high budget film, you know.
And outside of a few of the sets and the products of this movie and like the printer, you know, things like that, the memory brick, things like that, the sci-fi designs and everything just felt kind of basic. It didn't really go anywhere too far out there. And that's my thing, is just like, as far out there as this movie tries to go, I wish some of the sets and stuff kind of emulated that maybe a little bit more.
Right.
Things just felt very basic, and I get it. Like, it's sci-fi, so obviously it's kind of based in like our reality and things, but I felt like you could have done maybe just a little bit more besides a few elements. Like, I felt like the aliens looked really cool. I loved the design of them.
And the sound design is fantastic too.
And I love the printer thing. I thought that looked really cool. Other than that, like, I was just like, it feels just like any other kind of a sci-fi movie, you know?
Right. I guess my guess probably would have been is like maybe he was just trying to ground it, maybe, you know, so it doesn't look like super futuristic or out there. Maybe just kind of like set in like a modern time type of thing. But yeah, I thought it looked good. It wasn't like super impressive or anything, but I thought it looked good.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah.
Overall, when I first saw this, one of my friends asked me what I'd give it. And when I first left, I was probably somewhere around an 8. However, the more time I kind of had to sit with it, I'd probably be more at around like a 7.
Okay.
I think it's good. I think, again, the aspects that it succeeds in does really well. Like, big standout, Robert Pattinson just absolutely kills it.
Definitely.
He's really, for me, just kind of carried this movie. If you didn't have him, we might not be having the same conversation.
Right.
Overall, I wish Bong Joon Ho kind of took more, and that's funny, it kind of took a long time for this movie to come out, but I wish when he was making it, he kind of was a bit more harder on himself, as do some of these aspects work?
Right.
What's worth keeping? If it's not working, maybe I should cut it, or maybe I need to kind of go back to the drawing board and find out what does work, you know?
Exactly.
Really wouldn't recommend it to any kind of general audiences. If you love cinema and if you love Bong Joon Ho, yeah, watch it.
You'll probably already have seen it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And if you love Robert Pattinson, definitely I would recommend checking it out. He
kills it.
Showcases in this movie. Overall, if you're a sci-fi fan, I think there are some aspects you will really like with this movie. But overall, it just felt like a mishmash for me. Things just didn't blend well together. So yeah, I'd be probably around like a 7.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I would overall say it was an enjoyable time. There's things I really liked and appreciated about it. There's things I think could have been a lot better. It feels like things you could have cut out. You could have maybe shortened the runtime a bit more. Try to focus on things that were maybe a little bit more intriguing, like with the clone stuff and like maybe with the villain. I wasn't the biggest fan of the villain and everything, but overall, I would say it was an overall just good time. I am kind of curious to see how this will be on like a second watch and everything, and kind of see if I maybe like it more or like it less. Cool concepts here and there. Obviously, some of the performances are really great, like Robert Pattinson and Toni Collette. Some are just kind of okay or maybe not the best. But yeah, stuff with the animals was great. I thought he did a better job with it than in Okja, which I'm glad he did that better. But yeah, I would just say overall, it was a kind of a bit of a disappointment for me. Well, I did say I do enjoy it overall. Probably score-wise for me, I'm probably like at like a 6.5 out of 10, honestly. I feel like kind of the more I sit with it, the more I'm like, yeah, there's kind of a lot of issues with this. There's definitely a lot of things that I felt like could have been a lot better or a lot more expanded upon, you know? So yeah, I think for me, I'm at like a 6.5 out of 10.
Nice. All right, guys.
Unfortunately. Yeah,
if you've seen it, let us know what you guys think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very interesting way to kind of start the year, I guess, as far as, you know, our anticipated movies.
This one was not, didn't live up, unfortunately.
Didn't live up to the immense hype that I know me and Wallied had for it. But who knows, we might in the future talk about some of Bong Joon Ho's other movies that we're big fans of.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I'm excited to talk more about his other stuff because I do really love his other movies a lot more. But yeah.
And I hope he can definitely follow this up with something maybe just a little bit quicker and something maybe kind of draw back the budget a bit.
A lot more cohesive, maybe a bit more consistent, and maybe just expanding more on just the ideas that you're setting up, you know?
I would definitely say I think he would benefit from something maybe a bit more smaller scale. Who knows, when they wrote him this blank check for $100 million, maybe that was kind of overwhelming to kind of have to deal with.
Because I don't think he's ever really done anything all that high budget other than maybe Okja. So it was just kind of like,
again, the guys, like, this was post a Best Picture winner success, so he's
going to be getting more opportunities. You know?
People were probably lining up to be like, direct this movie, you know, and I can't imagine how overwhelming that must feel. But overall, if you've seen it, let us know what you guys think. Oh, and another brief thing I just want to mention. I saw this movie in IMAX. This movie was not worth seeing in IMAX at all.
Yikes. I went on Tuesday, so it was like a discount for me. So I was like, all right.
This movie was not worth it in IMAX. Like, nothing shined in this movie. Sorry.
Gotcha.
Again, outside of a couple small things, but it was so funny how they were anticipating like such a big release for this, and it just kind of
it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't surprise me though, because I'm watching the movie and I'm like, yeah, there's no way this is like a sellable thing to people. No, you know, really, like this is so out there and like so kind of high concept at points where I'm like, I don't even know if I could really recommend this to people.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
All right, guys.
Anyways,
we're going to be doing more reviews of movies we see throughout the year. So thank you guys for joining us.
All right. Good day and good night, mates.
See you on the next one.